The argument didn't begin as an argument. It started the way it always did, small, tired, and familiar. Maya Reynolds stood near the living room window while her sister paced between the couch and the coffee table, arms folded tight. "You never help around here," Emily said, not shouting, just stating it with practiced irritation. Susan sat on the armchair, nodding faintly, her eyes fixed on the floor like she was reviewing a list only she could see. Jonathan leaned against the wall with his hands in his pockets, listening longer than usual. "Before I continue, I need to ask you a quick favor. We're working toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your support truly makes a difference. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, it's completely free, like this video, and tell me where you're watching from. That single click helps this channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you stories like this." When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle. "In this family," he said, "you don't really matter anymore." The words landed softly, without heat, which somehow made them heavier. No one gasped. No one protested. The room went quiet, as if the sentence had sealed something shut. Maya didn't argue. She didn't ask what he meant. She simply nodded once. Not because she agreed, but because something inside her settled into clarity. If she truly didn't matter here, then she no longer had a role to perform. The argument dissolved on its own, like smoke without air. Emily walked away first. Susan followed. Jonathan stayed behind for a moment, watching Maya as if expecting a reaction that never came. She passed him calmly and went to her room, her mind already rearranging itself around a single, undeniable truth. Later that night, Maya sat on her bed with her laptop open, the glow filling the quiet room. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was focused. Her calendar stared back at her, colored blocks of reminders that didn't belong to her life but had somehow become her responsibility. Electricity payments, internet renewals, insurance forms, doctor appointments, grocery pickups, tech problems. Quiet favors stacked so neatly they looked invisible. She scrolled slowly, then closed the calendar and opened a blank note. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't make promises. She simply made a decision. She would stop doing the things she was never asked to do, but was always expected to finish. Not as punishment. Not as revenge. Just as alignment. The next morning, Susan knocked on her door while Maya was tying her shoes. "Can you pay the electricity bill before you leave?" she asked casually. Maya didn't look up. "I'm busy today." Susan blinked. "You always do it." Maya paused, then met her eyes. "Not today." There was no edge in her voice. Just fact. Susan stood there a second longer, confused, then walked away. A few minutes later, Emily called from the hallway. "Can you drop me off on your way to work?" Maya picked up her bag. "I can't." Emily frowned. "Since when?" Maya smiled politely. "Since now." She left the house feeling lighter, not triumphant, not guilty, just unavailable. At first, no one reacted. Or maybe they noticed but assumed she would return to normal. Maya stayed later at work, no longer rushing home. She enrolled in the online course she had bookmarked for months and never opened. She started going to the gym after work, letting the day burn off instead of carrying it home. Her weekends changed shape. No errands. No fixing. No silent cleaning behind other people's habits. Just space. Then the small fractures began. One evening, the Wi-Fi cut out. Emily sat on the floor twisting cables, frustration rising in her voice. "Maya, do you know what's wrong with this thing?" Maya passed by with her headphones on. "No idea," she said lightly. "You're good at this stuff," Emily insisted. Maya stopped. "I used to be," she replied, then kept walking. A few days later, Jonathan struggled with an online form at the kitchen table. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. Maya poured coffee. "There's a help guide on the site." He looked up. "Can't you just handle it?" She shook her head. "I'm heading out." The internet bill went unpaid. Groceries ran low. A dentist appointment was missed because someone assumed Maya had added it to her calendar. None of it was catastrophic. That was the point. The house didn't collapse, it slowed, stumbled, and exposed the quiet systems that had been holding it together. "Why are you acting like this?" Susan asked one evening, irritation creeping into her voice as Maya grabbed her jacket. Maya paused. "Like what?" Susan crossed her arms. "Like you don't care." Maya considered the words carefully. "I care," she said. I'm just not available.
Susan scoffed.
That's not how family works. Maya met her gaze.
I thought I didn't matter here. The room went still.
Susan's expression tightened, not with anger, but recognition.
She remembered. They all did.
Later that week, Emily knocked on Maya's door, holding her phone. I need to submit some documents, she said. Can you do it for me?
Maya leaned against the door frame. I can show you how. Emily sighed. You can just do it.
It'll take 2 minutes.
Maya shook her head.
I don't take responsibility where my role is dismissed.
Emily stared at her, then looked down. Fine, she muttered.
Maya sat with her and explained each step slowly, patiently. Emily struggled, made mistakes, corrected them herself. When it was done, she didn't say thank you.
But she didn't ask again either.
That night, Maya heard her parents talking behind their bedroom door, low voices, careful words.
Not about missing her presence. About missing what used to get done.
A month later, Jonathan asked Maya to sit down with them in the living room. The air felt different, quieter, heavier.
Susan sat beside him.
Emily leaned against the wall, unusually silent.
Jonathan cleared his throat.
That day, he said, I shouldn't have said what I said.
Maya listened without interrupting.
We didn't realize how much you handled, Susan added softly. We just assumed you'd always be around. Maya nodded once.
I was around, she said.
That was the problem.
Emily shifted uncomfortably. Things have been harder, she admitted.
Maya smiled faintly. Not because I stopped caring. Because no one noticed what was being carried.
Jonathan looked down.
We don't expect everything anymore.
Maya stood.
Good, she said. Because I'll help when I choose to, not because it's assumed.
No one argued.
The conversation ended without drama, without promises.
Cleanly.
As Maya went back to her room, she felt something settle. Not victory, not resentment, but balance. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't explained herself into exhaustion. She had simply stepped back and let absence speak clearly. And for the first time, everyone understood exactly what it had been saying. The house adjusted slowly, like a body relearning how to walk after years of leaning on a crutch. Maya noticed it in the small details. The refrigerator stayed emptier longer. A stack of unopened mail began to live on the counter. Jonathan started setting reminders on his phone, muttering to himself as he typed. Susan began double-checking bills, asking questions she had never bothered with before.
No one accused Maya outright.
Instead, there were pauses, moments where someone opened their mouth, then closed it again, realizing the help they expected was no longer automatic. One afternoon, Susan said carefully, Do you know when the insurance renewal is due? Maya glanced up from her laptop. It should be in your email.
Susan hesitated.
Could you check?
Maya shook her head.
I trust you've got it. Susan nodded slowly, as if accepting a rule she hadn't known existed. That evening, Jonathan struggled with a video call for work, the sound echoing awkwardly through the living room. Why is it doing this? He snapped.
Maya passed by.
Did you test the microphone settings?
He frowned.
I don't know how.
She stopped.
There's a tutorial.
He exhaled sharply but didn't argue.
Later, when the call finally connected, Maya heard relief in his voice, not because he needed her, but because he had solved it himself.
That was the shift. The house wasn't breaking. It was learning. And learning was uncomfortable.
At work, the difference was immediate. Maya wasn't distracted anymore. She stayed late without resentment, not because she had to escape home, but because she wanted to finish things properly. Her manager noticed. You've been sharper lately, he said during a meeting. More present. Maya smiled. I had room to be. She took on a project she would have declined months earlier. When she got home, she wasn't drained. She went to the gym, cooked meals for herself, slept without tension curling in her chest. Meanwhile, the family dynamics continued to shift. Emily started planning her own rides. I'll Uber, she muttered one morning, annoyed but resigned. Susan learned to pay bills online, calling customer support instead of Maya. They walked me through it, she said later, sounding both exhausted and oddly proud. Jonathan began organizing paperwork into labeled folders. One night, he asked quietly, How did you keep track of all this?
Maya shrugged.
By doing it early. He nodded, absorbing the lesson without comment. The house grew quieter, not hostile, just honest. No one pretended things were effortless anymore. The invisible work had become visible, not because Maya demanded recognition, but because its absence forced awareness. And for the first time, no one joked about her being good at that stuff. They treated competence like a skill, not a trait she owed them. Susan came into Maya's room one evening without knocking, then stopped herself and tapped lightly. "Can I sit?" she asked. Maya nodded. Susan perched on the edge of the chair, folding her hands. "I keep thinking about that day," she said. "About what your father said." Maya waited. "We didn't mean for you to feel expendable." Maya met her eyes. "I didn't feel expendable. I understood the position." Susan swallowed. "You've always been so capable. We thought you were fine." Maya exhaled slowly. "Being capable isn't the same as being considered." Susan nodded, tears threatening but contained. "I see that now." There was no apology yet, just acknowledgement. And that was enough. A few days later, Emily approached her in the kitchen. "I messed up a submission," she admitted. "I fixed it eventually." Maya smiled. "Good." Emily hesitated. "You could have done it faster." Maya tilted her head. "But then you wouldn't know how." Emily sighed, then laughed quietly. "I hate that you're right." It wasn't reconciliation. It was adjustment. The family wasn't suddenly kinder, but they were more careful, more aware. And Maya no longer rushed to fill silences that weren't hers to fix. Jonathan asked for another conversation on a Sunday afternoon. This time, there was no heaviness, just sincerity. "I relied on you," he said plainly. "More than I should have." Maya nodded. "I allowed it." He studied her. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Maya considered the question. "Because every time I tried, it turned into me explaining my worth." He winced. That wasn't fair. "No," she agreed. Susan joined them. "We want to do better," she said. Maya leaned back. "Then do it without expecting me to manage it." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. Jonathan finally said, "That's reasonable." From then on, requests changed shape. "Would you be willing to help?" instead of "Can you handle this?" Maya sometimes said yes. Sometimes no. Both answers were accepted. The balance wasn't perfect, but it was real. And Maya noticed something unexpected. She enjoyed helping again, when it was chosen, not assumed. The biggest change wasn't in the house. It was in Maya herself. She no longer measured her value by how smoothly things ran for others. She stopped equating silence with peace. One evening, she sat alone on the porch, listening to the quiet hum of the neighborhood. Emily passed by and said, "Dinner's ready, if you're joining." Maya smiled. "I will." Inside, the table wasn't perfectly set. The food was simple. But no one was waiting for her to fix anything. Jonathan poured drinks. Susan laughed at something small. The moment felt earned, not demanded. Later that night, Maya reflected on how little she had needed to do to change everything. She hadn't argued. She hadn't begged to be seen. She had stepped back and let reality teach the lesson for her. When people say you don't matter, sometimes the strongest response isn't confrontation. It's alignment. You take them at their word, and build a life that finally takes you seriously. As weeks passed, Maya noticed how her presence in the house had changed shape. She was no longer a background function running silently. She was a person whose time had edges. When she left early for work, no one asked where she was going. When she stayed out late, no one assumed she would return to fix something. One morning, Susan struggled with a pharmacy app at the kitchen table. "This thing keeps timing out," she muttered. Maya poured coffee. "Customer support usually responds fast." Susan nodded and picked up the phone herself. The moment passed without tension, without expectation. Jonathan began narrating his own learning process aloud. "Okay, that didn't work. Let me try this," as if reminding himself that effort didn't require delegation. Emily stopped rolling her eyes when plans fell through and started checking details ahead of time. None of them said, "We miss how easy it used to be." But Maya heard it in what they didn't ask for anymore. The house still had problems. It just didn't treat her as the solution by default. And strangely, that made her feel closer to them, not obligated, not burdened, just present. At work, Maya's momentum built. She led meetings without rushing, spoke with confidence she hadn't realized had been buried under fatigue. When a promotion opportunity opened, Her manager called her in. "You've been carrying more responsibility," he said.
"And handling it well." Maya smiled.
"I finally have the capacity."
She accepted the role without hesitation.
That night, she came home later than usual.
Emily glanced up.
"Big day."
Maya nodded.
"I got promoted."
Susan's face lit up.
"That's wonderful."
Jonathan raised his glass.
"You earned it." There was no undercurrent of "what about us?"
No reminder of unfinished tasks.
Just recognition. Maya felt something settle deep in her chest, not pride alone, but relief. Her growth no longer felt like a betrayal of her family.
It felt separate. Healthy.
Real. One evening, Emily knocked on Maya's door holding a laptop.
"Can you look at this with me?" she asked.
Maya gestured for her to sit. "What's going on?" Emily explained the issue, stumbling through details but trying. Maya listened, then said, "You're close. Try adjusting the file format." Emily did, watched the screen update, and exhaled. "Okay, that worked."
She looked up.
"You could have just fixed it."
Maya smiled gently.
"You fixed it."
Emily hesitated.
"I didn't realize how much you were doing before."
Maya shrugged.
"I didn't realize how much I was giving without being asked to." Emily nodded, absorbing the weight of it. There was no apology, just understanding. And for Maya, that was enough.
Jonathan approached her later that week while she was reading. "I want to say something," he said. Maya closed the book. "Okay." He sat across from her.
"I confused reliability with obligation," he admitted.
"And I said something I can't take back." Maya studied him. "Words matter," she said calmly. He nodded. "I know. I'm learning that."
There was no dramatic reconciliation, no emotional collapse. Just two adults adjusting their understanding of each other. Jonathan stood to leave, then paused. "I'm glad you didn't fight me that day." Maya looked up. "So am I." Because fighting would have kept her trapped in explanation. Stepping back had done what arguing never could. The house no longer felt like a place where Maya disappeared into usefulness. It felt imperfect, human, occasionally frustrating, but honest.
She helped sometimes.
Other times, she didn't.
And no one kept score.
On a quiet evening, she sat alone in her room, reflecting on how simple the change had been.
She hadn't demanded respect. She had withdrawn access. She hadn't punished anyone. She had redirected herself.
The clarity stayed with her. When people tell you who you are to them, the mistake isn't believing them.
The mistake is continuing to act as if they didn't speak.
Maya didn't disappear.
She simply stopped overextending.
And in doing so, she finally occupied her own life fully. Change didn't arrive all at once. It settled in gradually, like new furniture placed carefully in a familiar room. One evening, Susan burned dinner slightly and laughed instead of sighing.
"Guess I waited too long," she said.
Jonathan shrugged. "We'll order something."
Emily checked her phone.
"I'll pick it up."
No one looked at Maya.
And for the first time, that absence of expectation felt like respect. Maya joined them at the table later, eating takeout from paper containers. Jonathan glanced at her. "You don't have to stay if you've got plans."
Maya smiled.
"I want to." The difference mattered. Wanting to be present felt entirely different from being required. The conversation drifted easily. Work stories, neighborhood gossip, small frustrations.
No one assigned roles. No one filled silence with demands.
Maya realized she was finally part of the family as a person, not a function. A week later, Emily stopped her in the hallway. "I'm moving out in a few months," she said.
Maya raised an eyebrow.
"Really?"
Emily nodded.
"I need to figure things out on my own."
She hesitated.
"I think I leaned on you too much." Maya studied her sister's face, not defensive, not dramatic, just honest.
"We both played our parts," Maya said.
Emily exhaled, relieved. "I hope you know I don't take you for granted anymore." Maya smiled softly. "That means more than you think." They stood there a moment longer, then Emily added, "I'll still call you. Just, not for everything."
Maya laughed. "Good." The exchange felt adult.
Balanced.
Final. Jonathan and Susan adjusted too.
They argued more openly, not loudly, but directly, about responsibilities they had once quietly passed on. One night, Jonathan said, "We should have noticed sooner."
Susan replied, We noticed. We just didn't question it.
Maya overheard from the hallway and didn't step in.
She didn't need to. The work of awareness belonged to them now.
Later, Susan knocked on Maya's door.
We're proud of you, she said simply. Maya nodded.
Thank you.
No qualifiers. No expectations attached. The words stood on their own.
On a quiet Saturday morning, Maya packed a small bag and headed out for the day. Jonathan called after her, "Be safe." Susan added, "Text if you'll be late."
Maya paused at the door.
"I will." Outside, the air felt open. She realized something important as she walked to her car. Stepping back hadn't made her smaller.
It had made her clearer. The family hadn't fallen apart without her constant effort. They had adjusted,
learned, taken responsibility, and she had gained something far more valuable than appreciation: autonomy. Maya understood now that being needed is not the same as being valued. For a long time, she had confused endurance with love, usefulness with belonging. When she was told she didn't matter, she didn't argue the point.
She accepted it and acted accordingly.
That choice changed everything. Not because it punished anyone, but because it revealed the truth.
She was still there, still present, just no longer available to be overlooked.
And that was the lesson she carried forward. When someone defines your worth for you, the most powerful response is not resistance, but alignment. You step into a life where your value is no longer up for debate.
Thank you for watching until the end.
If this story resonated with you, remember this: sometimes the strongest response isn't to argue, explain, or prove your worth. Sometimes it's to step back, realign your energy, and let people experience the space you leave behind.
You don't need permission to choose yourself.
If you've ever felt unseen, overused, or quietly taken for granted, you're not alone, and you're not wrong for wanting more. Value doesn't come from how much you carry for others. It comes from knowing when to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. If this message spoke to you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss future stories like this.
Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most.
Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, your presence is a choice, not an obligation.